The following is an educational video based on the true events of the Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire. The Triangle factory, located in the top 3 floors of the Ash building, was owned by Max Planck and Isaac Harris. That afternoon, the total of 600 people were working at the factory. Most of them were immigrants, young girls who did not speak English. The fire began in a scrap fabric bin, most likely from a discarded cigarette. Under these circumstances and the nature of the business, the fire spread easily through rooms in the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors, which were filled with combustible materials. At the time of the fire, there were 4 elevators with access to the factory floors, but only one was working that afternoon. The corridors were narrowed and piled up with workstations and tire workers. During this period, New York City laws require buildings 11 stories or higher to have stone floors and metal window frames. The Ash building was 10 stories high and had wood floors, wood window frames, and wood trims. Also, buildings with 10,000 square feet of floor space required to have 3 staircases per floor, versus 2 staircases that the Ash building had. During the design of the building, the architect asked for approval to only have 2 staircases, given that there was additional outside fire escape. These fire escape stairs terminated on the 2nd floor, not the ground. As the fire grew, panic was unused. The young workers tried to exit the building through the elevator, but it could only hold 12 people. 4 trips were made until the elevator then broke down. In desperate attempts to escape the fire, the girls left behind waiting for the elevator plunged down the shaft to their death. Those that went through the stairwells found that the door was locked at the bottom of the stairs, and many of them burnt alive. The fire escape collapsed under the weight of too many people. Death was basically preventable since most of the victims died to the fails of safety features and locked doors within the factory building in order to prevent death. The first fire alarm was sent at 4:45 p.m. In 3 minutes, the firefighters arrived. However, the bodies of the jumpers fell in the fire hoses, making it difficult to begin fighting the fire, whereas drawn fire trucks lack water pressure. The firefighter ladder reached only to the 7th floor, and the fire was on the 8th, as previously mentioned. In some cases, the net turned out to be mostly ineffectual. The firefighters then started to pull people from the 10th floor for safety. The fire department had the flames under control by 5 p.m. But when the firefighters entered the floors to continue to bring the smoldering, they found shatter machines, intense heat, and bodies. Finally, by 5:15, they had the fire completely under control. 49 people suffocated by smoke and died. 36 died in the elevator shaft. 58 died from jumping to the sidewalk, and 2 more died later from the injuries. 146 people were killed in this incident. Although fire code regulations during these times were not as strict as they are today, several of these regulations were violated. In order to avoid stealing, and as many workers claimed, the fire doors on the 9th floor were deliberately locked by the owners, and the only exit that was left open, which was used customarily to control and inspect the workers to prevent them from stealing, was now engulfed in flames. There were only 2 of the 3 required exit stairs inside the building, and these exit stairs had no light, except a skylight which led to the basement rather than the ground. The fire alarm system and the standpipes with hoses that were required to be connected to the roof water tank at each floor were faulty. The Triangle Company said they would correct these issues during an inspection 3 years prior to the fire, but they never did. Other contributors to the fire were the barrels of oil that leaked on the floor, the wood framing construction that was allowed at the time for buildings less than 11 stories high, and the large amount of combustibles such as wicker baskets full of cotton scraps. To top it all off, the rusty iron fire escape collapsed, causing many more deaths. The design of the building was poor in terms of fire safety according to code standards today. Long wooden tables became obstacles and created cluttered workspaces. Labor laws then required that factory doors open outward, if practical.
The building's architect claimed that this was impractical because the stair landings were too small. All exit doors were then designed to open inward rather than out, causing the panicked workers to pile up behind the door, unable to pull it open.
1 week after the Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire, an emergency meeting was held at the Metropolitan Opera House to call for action on fire safety. As outrage grew in New York, city legislators enacted a law that created the Fire Investigating Commission, or FIC, which was led by Tammany Hall machine leaders. Tammany Hall was a political organization in New York at the time and was similar to the Democratic Party of today. The FIC investigated thousands of workplaces over the next 2 years. And because Tammany Hall held such power, over 20 laws were placed that would better ensure fire and building safety for factory workers. One of the most significant laws that was passed as a result of this tragedy included New York State Labor Law, Article 6, Section 80. This law stated that all doors shall open outwardly and remain unlocked during working hours. Other laws that related to the fire included that for buildings 2,500 to 5,000 square feet, they required 2 staircases, and for every additional 5,000 square feet, another staircase was required. Also, buildings over 150 feet high must now have metal trim, metal window frames, and stone or concrete floors. But buildings under 150 feet would have no such requirements. Perhaps the most impacted by this tragedy were the families of the victims. They not only underwent emotional trauma through the loss of a family member or becoming an orphan child, but also underwent financial distress. Families were compensated only $75 by the factory owners and $300 by the insurance company. Half of the families' already low salaries were now gone. With fire codes, there's almost always a bare minimum requirement. For example, depending on building occupancy and load, there is a minimum width of egress. Interior designers can go above and beyond, when possible, to give more than just the minimum clearance. Furthermore, interior designers can ensure fire safety by maintaining proper communication with the contractor. In providing extremely detailed specifications, you leave little room for error. Making regular site visits as well during the time of construction ensures that elements are installed properly. For example, a designer can only ensure that intumescent sealing is being used on all the fire exit doors by visiting. Today, the Ash Building is known as the Brown Building at New York University. It's part of the Silver Center for Arts and Sciences. It's listed on the National Register of Historic Places and was named a National Historic Landmark in 1991. Although it's part of a prestigious university today, it's still most known for the tragedy that occurred there in 1911.